Hello everyone, this is Taryn with Wonderfully Made Handcrafting, and today I'm working on day 5 of By the Well for God's Pleasing in His Sight devotional. So today I grabbed out this Our Aim stamp set, which has a really cool map that looks distressed and all, but it does have kind of a tropical theme. You see some palm trees and a volcano, and I don't really want those on my map since my theme kind of isn't tropical necessarily. I'm adding some photos that remind me of mountains and plains and everything. So I want to take this tropical theme off the map. So how I'm doing that is adding some mint tape to cover up those palm trees and the volcano. Also, I'm taking off the heart on this map simply so I can do some stitching later. So all I have to do is add that mint tape, and then I'm going to stamp on this canvas drawstring bag that held the kit itself. So I'll stamp with some VersaFine ink. Now, usually I would use a StazOn or archival ink when stamping on fabric, but lately I've noticed that stamping on fabric, I can use VersaFine ink, and it hasn't been that bad. So as you saw, I took off that mint tape before I stamped this down. That way I don't have any ink on the heart, the volcano, or the palm trees. And now I am coming in with this title of Pleasure. This is, I thought it was kind of funny because pleasure rhymes with treasure, and we're kind of working on this kind of treasure map idea here. But this whole theme of day 5 is grieved versus pleased. And we see in Psalms 147:11, which says, "The Lord takes pleasure in those who fear him." So I actually grabbed my husband for this portion of the video. So no, I didn't, automatically grow hairy man hands. But anyways, I didn't know how fast this canvas would light. And so that is why I grabbed that water on the side just in case. But he is just burning the edges for me and then blowing it off. It does make it, crispy, and he's trying to, flatten it out a little bit for me there. But anyways, I really liked the look of this. It didn't burn too fast. I probably could have done it myself. I'm not afraid of fire. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to burn super fast and, I'm struggling to put out a fire. So anyways, that is why I grabbed him to do that. I would feel comfortable next time just doing it myself. I just, first time lighting canvas on fire, I didn't know how fast it would go. So anywho, now I am grabbing some embroidery floss, and I'm just going to embroider the little track that is already laid out on this treasure map. And at the end of it, I'm going to mark an X where that heart was. So it kind of is like X marks the spot on a treasure map. And this took a little bit of time, but it definitely was worth it. I really like the texture that it gives the map as well. Also, I do have to say I did keep 2 layers to this map, so I ended up stamping it out on the canvas bag, and when I cut it out, I kept that second layer on the back side for multiple reasons. Number one, I just always do this because the canvas can be a little bit see-through, and so by doubling it up, you have a more substantial map. Also, because it'll give you a lot more texture on the edges. And so burning it, you kind of burn those 2 layers together, but also stitching it together really does help secure those 2 layers as one. I also really wanted to add the verse on this Bible journaling page, and so I took one of the labels and ran it through my typewriter to add Psalm 147:11 on that. Now, I really fidgeted with this page. I was having some major issues with layering and creating a cluster. So honestly, I cut out a ton of footage. Before I fast forwarded this video, this whole thing was actually 2 hours long. So you can just imagine how long I fidgeted with all this stuff. But I eventually decided I'm going to use that clear sticker that has the hand with the compass. I thought that really matched up with this treasure map. So what I'm going to do is lay that down on some white cardstock and then fussy cut it out. And then I'll continue working on all this layering. But honestly, it was a little difficult this time, but it ends up coming together. Now, since this does have a watercolor look, I decided to add a little bit of shading with some Distress Oxide. I want to make sure it has a border or an edge so it doesn't look like it's just floating on some random white cardstock. So now I'm moving on to a wax seal. This was probably a little extra for this page since I already had like a main focal point of a map, but I really liked using this. This is a new wax seal that I got a month ago and still haven't had a chance to use in a Bible journaling page. And so it is like a really pretty floral oval kind of look. I end up taking some blues and adding a little bit of white to tone it down a little bit. Once it is melted, I decide to add one more little cube of white wax right here, and that gives me a really nice blue to match. So that is kind of what I love, mixing and matching my melts to kind of give that color that I definitely want. So since this stamp is in an oval shape, I definitely want to pour the wax in an oval shape to begin with. That way everything looks symmetrical as I stamp this down. Now I do wait a couple minutes to let it cool down a little bit, and then it just pops off. And then since I stamped on a nonstick mat, it is fairly easy to get off. I think it's, a good tool to use when you are working with wax stamps. So now I'm back to fidgeting and trying to figure out this cluster. I decided since I had that big treasure map, I needed another big piece to kind of fill everything in. When I was layering before that piece, I had a lot of empty space and it just seemed like something was missing. I also struggled heavily with where to put this wax seal. Eventually I decided to put it on this map, and I'm going back and forth deciding if I thought the copper metallic marker would work better or the gold. Ultimately, I decided to go with that gold, and I think it was a good decision. Using the metallic Sharpies really help the stamped image to pop on these. So if you ever want, a little bit of that wax stamp to stand out, I really suggest just going to your Walmart and picking some up. This cluster was looking a little too boxy or all in one place, and so I decided to tuck this extra piece of cardstock that I had on hand. I had made this with the little cardstock that came with the fabric set, and I just fed it through my Big Shot machine with a newer embossing folder from Tim Holtz. I actually did an Instagram story on it, and then I had sprayed it with some resist spray and adding a little bit more distress to it. Now I didn't want it to look just like a square piece of paper, so I decided to fold up at that corner edge and then added a little bit more of that black to the corner, so it added a little bit more interest. And then I'm going to use my Crop-A-Dile to add an eyelet to it as well. Now, before I start connecting my cluster all together and stapling and gluing everything, I am going to make sure that I have everything distressed the way that I want it. So I end up grabbing this piece. This was the Tim Holtz ephemera piece. It just has a little thing that says nest and eggs. And then I'm distressing it. I did kind of distress it a little too hard and ripped it in two places. But no worries, that's kind of the look I'm going for. So I'm just making sure that I cover all the white cardstock kind of seen once you distress that. So I'll cover that up with some of that distress ink. And now I am stapling things together and kind of making sure that I have all my layers together the way that I want them. I know I've said this multiple times in previous videos, but I really prefer to work on my clusters before laying them down on the page. And so that is why I glue everything one to another or staple them. I try to get all those pieces together before I paste it down on the page. I feel like you get much better placement that way, and you have a little bit more of wiggle room time. I feel like once it's down on the page, you're like, oh no, that's not where I want it. And it just makes it a little bit more difficult. So that is why I make my clusters off the page first and then work on the background and paste it all down together. Now that I have that cluster ready to go, I'll start working on this background. Now, honestly, this background took a little bit more work than I was expecting as well. I started with some brushed corduroy and added that down. I wasn't pleased with how yellow it was, and so then I turned to my tried and true. I grabbed my frayed burlap and add a little bit of that, and then I decided I would add some peeled paint to try to bring in some more greens from the photo I have with the mountains and the compass with the hand. But once I add that down, I'm like, this needs a little bit more distressing. I wasn't hating the green, but wanted a little bit more of a distressed look. So I added some water droplets to this. Now the water droplets turned yellow. And so I picked them up. That's what I was going to do anyhow. But I still wasn't pleased. So then I grabbed some frayed burlap distress stain, and I'm kind of flicking some spots on there. I really like how that looks, but now the distress stains look too dark in my mind. So then we go to the white gesso. Now white gesso can fix a lot of backgrounds by toning it down a little bit, but you do have to remember that you're adding a wet medium on top of distress oxides. So that is going to most likely activate those distress oxides again. So you'll see a little bit of yellow that pops out as I add this white gesso on top. But no worries. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 layers of this white gesso. So that will tone it down a little bit. And you'll see here, I missed some footage, but what I did was I added some frayed burlap on top of that white gesso, and then I stamped with my Corinthian stamp. Now this is from By the Well for God. However, it is not available in the shop. It was part of a retreat I did, and so By the Well had made a stamp for me for my retreat. So anyways, that is kind of how I finished the background. I am so sorry I lost some footage. The only reason why I lost some footage is because it took me so stinking long to figure out my cluster that my phone decided to turn off on me. So I'll add that date stamp to the bottom right hand corner with my Dile label maker and add a little bow to the top. And then to finish it off, I ended up adding some green Nuvo drops to this left hand corner, and that will be it. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me over on Instagram at Wonderfully Made Handcrafting. I'll try to link everything I use down below, and I hope you have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.